So money makes the world go round, but as it's currently used, it is destroying the planet. We've had some announcements so far at COP with the UK Chancellor Rishi Sunak talking that we are going to be rewiring the global financial system for net zero, with plans for sovereign green bonds and corporate climate disclosures. And some of the headline commitments we've heard so far include this roadmap to sustainable investing, with its mandate for large firms to be drawing up from high emitting sectors to be drawing up net zero transition plans with being checked by a gold standard science-based verification scheme. We've also heard the announcement about the Glasgow Financial Alliance, which was launched back in April, that it's now reached $130 trillion in value, representing 40% of the world's financial assets from about 450 firms across 45 nations. So apparently we have the money and it's all going to be okay, that we will just reach that net zero. So is this going to be enough? Is that really going to make the transition that we so urgently need? So this is what we're going to be discussing with this fantastic panel, our Finance Sisters panel. I'm Rhiannon Sherrington. I'm the founder of the Women in Sustainability Network, amplifying the voices, impact and influence of women, supporting them to have the confidence, courage and community to lead and be a force for good. And we have got an incredible lineup for you. So very briefly, we have CHANTE Harris, who is the Director of Climate Investment and Partnerships at Second Muse. We have Inge Ralph, Executive Director and Founder of the Global Choices. We have Julia Davies, founder of We Have the Power, an environmental fund. We have Stephanie Betts, lead of the Next Generation Stewardship Hub at the Women in Business and Finance. And we have CAREY BOHJANEN, founder of Rallying Cry. And we also have Justine Winters, co-founder and executive director of One Earth. They'll all be saying a little bit more about what they do in a moment. But as you can see, we've got our work cut out to get a really good discussion going on here within the time we've got available. And I do want to take some questions at the end if I can. So first up, I think we'll start at the very far end, if that's okay. Could you just introduce yourself very briefly and then answer this top level question? Can actually our existing financial system be remodeled to be fit for the future?
Great, thank you very much. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah, all right. Good morning, my name is CAREY BOHJANEN and I am the founder of the Rallying Cry, which is an initiative, fast growing, relatively new, designed to support and amplify, elevate the voices of women from the Global South in these conversations around finance, climate finance, and of course COP26. So we are here representing. What we are designed to do is catalyze private sector investment toward gender and climate solutions on the ground level, and we're starting with Africa. I think that the financial system could indeed be remodeled, but we need to see a lot more women in it, at the top levels of decision making, in the boards, in the investment committees, working within the different financial institutions that are out there so that women, when they come in the doors, see people that look like them, that understand their needs. And we also need to see more women as the recipients of the financial flows. And particularly, we know, especially in the COP26 conversations and in all the work that I've been doing, we have seen loads of money that's been earmarked for women and girls in emerging markets, even relating to climate, but it's just not getting down to the ground level. And so in order to remodel and remake the financial system as it currently exists, I would advocate for more collaborative partnerships and operating more of an ecosystem-based approach to really find the roots to the ground level solutions that are already there, by the way. We are not talking about victims or beneficiaries. We are talking about amazing women and girls leading the change. We just need to give them a chance to let their messages be heard and get those financial vehicles and instruments channeled in their direction. So I'll stop there for now.
Thank you.
Am I answering the same question?
Yes.
You have to remind me of the question.
Do you believe that we can remodel our current financial system to be fit for the future?
Well, we have to. Whether it's our current financial system or not, we have got to remodel the financial system. So when I was invited to come on this panel today, I thought, oh, why am I going on a finance panel? I'm not in finance. But then I thought, actually, we're all in finance. It's like when people say, I'm not into politics, I'm not in politics, we're all in politics. If we don't address what can seem a really dry subject, our financial system, we're not going to sort this out. So we don't have time to not get involved in finance. And I think that, as in all sectors, as women, we are the primary carers. Many of us are mothers. And that is why, for us, this is such an emotive issue. This isn't something that, as our current leaders can do. They can be talking about these future targets, and they can be talking in very dry tones about, oh, we can't do that because the financial system doesn't allow us to do that. We've got to do that. And I'm personally not willing to accept that we can't change this system because I've got children to protect.
Thank you. Sophie?
Right, so it's along the same lines. I decided about 4 years ago that it was time for me to go back to finance. I'd taken a break after having children. And that just having spent already 20 years in finance, I knew the game reasonably well. But what I didn't know is asset management. So I thought I'm going to go and have a look, see how they do it and what they do and how they're reshaping what they're doing for the world we're living in. And it was really interesting because what I noticed is that the system has been designed for a very different world. It was designed for a Victorian capitalism. It was designed to, boost GDP after the First World War. And all of that was rigged towards GDP and earnings growth. And right now we're facing a challenge that is actually even hard to put in words because it's so grim. And if you read too much about it, then it actually almost freezes you. So I don't want to be talking about the downside. I want to be talking about the upside, the potential, and the potential of reinvention that we have at the moment. So about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I woke up one day and I said, I'm going to do something about it. Like many of us here, I'm a mother, I've had children, and I can't look at them thinking they're not going to make it to 40. I just can't get this into my head. And I'm thinking, well, not under my watch. So that's basically what I did. And I called up, actually, I wrote to him, Mark Carney, and I've actually messaged him this morning saying, can you please tune in? We're here, we're going to talk about you. Come on, Mark, come on. So a big thanks to him. He's been there all along, calling us on the tragedy on the horizon, calling us on finance for all. Now we need to talk about climate for all. So 2 and a bit years ago, we got into a room with him and a couple of other really big sort of systemic brains, because I thought we have systemic problems. We need systemic brains to fix the problem. And one of the things we talked about was to make climate disclosure mandatory. I was like, okay, tick that box. GFANs were there. Well done, Mark, for pushing that through. ISSB was the biggest groundbreaking change because finally we have a potential set of metrics that we can use to report both financial and non-financial data in an integrated way. So we don't have to look around everywhere and try to fight obfuscation in all those reports. We can actually have everything in one place. So that will help, but that's not the end and that's not the solution. So my big call out to him today and to some of the big investors is actually to change the system. We need to slightly replumb it, and it's a very small change that we need. And I think they all know what it is, and it's called executive pay. And that's the word I haven't heard at all coming out of COP. It's a dangerous conversation, but we need to have that conversation because at the moment you're paying people to do one thing, but actually you want them to do this. So until you align the incentives with the outcome that we want, you're not going to get this. We don't have the time to turn everybody's mentality and say, today you're going to be a climate hero or an inclusion hero. But if you actually say, look, you want to be promoted to MD, why don't you include more women? Or why don't you look at how you're transforming, helping the transformation, the transition of your business? How are you helping the transition to climate resilience? So that's really what I would like to see on the back of COP. That's my call out to Mark again, to say, look, GFANs, net zero, brilliant. You've achieved some amazing things this week. Let's be positive, but let's keep pushing because we're not quite done yet. So we can pick it up offline afterwards with the right people. But I think for all of the stories I've heard today and yesterday, I've only been here 2 days. Every time I thought, we can fix this. We can get this. You've got the voice, you've got the ideas, you've got the innovation. Women have the power. We've got 85%, of the global spending power. We've got it. Don't ask anybody. You've got it. Just do it. Vote with your feet. Support companies that are supporting transition. So sorry that was long, but I just really meant to send that little message, and I think we can help everybody. It's kind of an enabler. Finance has to rise to the challenge and become an enabler.
And yeah, so fixing the financial system, align executive pay to those transition plans. Brilliant, thank you. Chante?
Hi, my name is Chante Harris, and as she mentioned, I'm the Director of Climate Investment and Partnerships for a company called Second Use. We believe that future economies have to be more sustainable, regenerative, and inclusive. That's not something we debate. We operate in a way where we launch new mechanisms, but also new type of innovative vehicles that look at how do you really take tech, how do you take all these emerging industries, and how do you support the best innovators across the globe. We know that the best innovators, the best teams are diverse. They're led by women. They're building innovative solutions, and yet if you look at VC, if you look at the capital that goes to founders, they're not coming to women, they're not coming to people of color, and we believe that that has to change, not only from an impact standpoint, but also if we're going to actually innovate, if we're going to actually find the best solutions, fund them, scale them, we have to look at every part of the globe, and we have to be adamant about ensuring that we're a part of not only that discussion, but the way products and technologies are built, the way that they're scaled. I came into this space as an operator, first doing policy. Never thought I'd be in the investment world. I never thought it was sexy. Someone before I came up here was like, oh no, not the finance panel, right? And you know, like I get it. Like that was also me. And I think the reality is that while it may not sound sexy and trendy all the time, it is at the core of how we are going to change this world and this planet. And women have to be not only at the table, we have to lead the way we talk about redesigning financial mechanisms. And so I run a climate tech venture studio. I designed it and launched it with one of the only Latinas who was the first Latina to raise millions of dollars as a hardware founder. And she's built products, she's built companies, I've scaled companies. And we said from the start, we are going to make this inclusive, not only in how we recruit global innovators, but also who's a part of our team, who's our mentors, who's the investors we engage. And we're building an incredible ecosystem, and to me it's just default, but the bar has honestly been set so low that sometimes I feel like we're getting celebrated for what just feels like common sense, and that's a part of the problem. So we have to redesign them. It's not working. We all know that. We don't even engage in this conversation of, you know, is it possible, right, for us to continue in the same way? We can't. There's too much at risk, right? But also there's so much opportunity to innovate. And it's bizarre to me that we talk about technology and innovation in technology, but then capital markets are just like, hey, we're still here doing the same thing we've been doing for centuries. Like, it's not helpful. It's not even the best way to do business. And so we have to start from just changing the conversation from the reality that the norm is not working, the status quo does not work. Half the time we're leaving customers out of the conversation, right? We have non-diverse teams literally scaling technologies and not understanding their customer segments, and then blaming their customer segments for not adopting technologies. It's ridiculous. And yes, I think we have to do better. We all deserve to do better. And I think more importantly, I want to encourage women in this room to know that you are part of the capital conversation. It is for you, and you should be feeling like you can lead in these discussions, because the reality is like it's not working. And men have had a long time to figure it out, and they haven't. So
thank you. I think we're getting the message here that money is sexy, and that if women had designed it in the first place, we'd be in a very different place than we are right now. So, Justine, would you like to answer the first question? Can we fix it?
No, it has to be totally redesigned. You know, let's just say that. So my name is Justin Winters. I'm co-founder and executive director of an organization called One Earth. We use science, inspiring media, and a very innovative approach to philanthropy called philanthractivism to drive collective change to achieve a world of less than 1.5 degrees C. My experience comes out of leading and building Leonardo DiCaprio's foundation for 13 years and having the deep honor and privilege of getting resources to groups on the ground that are leading the way in solving climate change. And I came into the space being an art history major, fine arts major. I was an activist in high school. I wasn't part of the philanthropy system. I wasn't part of the NGO institutions. I had a fresh take and fresh look at what was going on, and I had the privilege of meeting people around the world who were doing the work on the ground. And that experience gave me incredible hope and an internal sense of what could happen if we changed the paradigm. So many people in this room probably do know, and I actually had the similar response this morning. I'm on the finance panel, but philanthropy is a big piece of the finance, conversation. And right now, less than 2% of all philanthropic dollars are going to climate and environment. And just a fraction of that, around a quarter of it, is actually reaching efforts on the ground, which is appalling. And 0.2% of philanthropic resources reach women-led, women-operated efforts. This is a paradigm that has to shift. I know in my gut, and I know from having had the experience of getting $100 million out the door to grassroots community-led solutions, that if we change that paradigm, it will all change. It's about resources, it's not just money. It's about having the capacity, the support to scale solutions, to have support on the ground to implement your vision, and women need to be at the fore of that. So next year, we are launching a new campaign and fund called Daughters for Earth that invites every woman, every daughter, every girl to be part of the solution and getting resources to the women around the world that are leading the way, that are leading the fight to protect and restore the earth. Everything from conserving and restoring nature to shifting farms and communities to regenerative agriculture. There are women in every region of the world doing the hard work, and they deserve the resources. So part of fixing the problem is improving the pipeline of how resources actually get to on-the-ground grassroots climate solutions led by women.
Thank you. Yeah. So we're definitely hearing, that women are not getting the funds, and there seems to be some real blocks in the chain for them getting them. So I'd love your thoughts then, panel, on what's the role for governments here, what's the role for private collaborative partnerships and philanthropy. So anybody can just jump in and we'll just take it from there. Who would like to go first?
Happy to have a go at that.
Okay.
I think we've talked a lot about governments and about policy, and I think, now we have an obvious sort of, let's call it commitment. We've heard a lot about that word. It's starting to have a bad connotation, but commitments to do better and to focus on the environment, on climate, on inclusion. But I think we don't focus enough on the power of private enterprise and on companies joining up, in particular through coalitions. You've got some amazing coalitions doing incredible work. Things like the Water Resilience Coalition, some energy coalitions. Everybody who really understands one sector, they can grapple the challenge of that sector together. And I think that's really powerful. This is really how it needs to start. And once you also incentivize the management of these companies to do the right thing, to allocate the money to inclusion, to the various relevant KPIs for their business, key performance indicators on climate outcomes, but it can't be 5% of their pocket, right? 5% doesn't get you moving in that world. You need to talk about 30, 50% in the right sector, perhaps more. But I think it's really important that we now start to look at the long-term benefits of what the company can do and deliver on climate, on inclusion, because then suddenly that pipeline flows straight to your projects. From what I've heard on this panel, suddenly, if we can unlock that, the transformative power of finance is enormous. And I think this is, at the moment, it's just like, it's a funnel that's strangled. And until we undo that choke, we can't just really ripple that through the entire system. And this is why this discussion is so important. If we can unlock that, we'll change everything.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Look, for the work that I've been doing for the last 15 years or more in the finance space, we've just skipped the government because it wasn't ever moving fast enough. They just weren't in the right places at the right time. They were too slow. Whatever they came up with was a great idea, but it wasn't always enforced or it wasn't actually properly implemented. And what we figured out was that actually we could move change faster by working in the private sector, and particularly in the finance sector, because of course money makes the world go round. It's where we have the most influence and power to make change. And of course women have been absent in the financial sector in many different ways. I have since, in all these years, now come to modify my position slightly, which is to recognize that governments are still moving too slow, but there is a role for them. And so we need to be very clever about how we engage and work with governments, because they have a very useful role in creating these enabling environments where we can create more change and where they create this space for women to actually come to the fore. And so, for example, and I've worked with the government in many numbers of different initiatives. You can work with the central bank, for example, who then can regulate and create the sticks and the carrots to mobilize the banks and the financial sector players to behave in different ways, to change their behavior. With the rallying cry, we've developed what we call the flywheel, the rallying cry flywheel, where we start always at the heart of our work with the women on the ground level. They are the inspiration, they are the innovators, they are the ones who are leading and are the change that the world and the financial system actually desperately needs. We start with their inspiring stories. For example, we bring them to COP. They come and they go on the stage, they interact, they tell people about their stories. Voices from the front lines, which here in a COP situation, we've seen all the pictures. Pale, stale, male. Sorry, not interesting, not particularly conducive to change. But we bring them in there and we mix them up, and then we try and get them to inspire the policymakers, the government, the state actor players. We've got Prudence Muchinoto coming from Zambia in the big room right now on Gender Day on the big stage, telling everyone her story from Zambia. So we hope to inspire and engage those policymakers at the government, state actor level to then make those commitments where they say, we need to do more, we need to do better. And what they do is they tell their players within their ecosystem, and they earmark capital for allocation to these types of initiatives. And what happens is then you get the institutional investors, the impact investors, the development finance institutions, and those types of players saying, okay, we have a mandate, we have to use this money, we need to find a way to mobilize it. And then we work to try and help them figure out how to get it into those solutions on the ground, just like you're talking about, Justine, where we can help them grow and scale those solutions. And then, again, as they succeed, you produce a whole new crop of inspiring and exciting and engaged women-led businesses. And so we turn the flywheel one crank at a time, and we spiral upwards to reach these highest, best possible outcomes.
It's building an ecosystem.
We're building the
that's going
ecosystem.
to start creating positive feedback loops. We've talked a lot about the negative feedback loops in the environment, but I think if we take the right initiatives now, we can create a very positive feedback loop. And I think that's what's really exciting about those initiatives, just get it done.
Get it done and get the women in there getting it done, because they are just doing it. And as we're going down the panel, I'm hearing the same thing over and over again, which is, okay, not only are the women not getting the finance, but all the women who are engaged around looking at moving the finance are using words like collaboration, inclusive, collective wisdom, moving together, partnerships, ecosystems. We see this different way of doing business, which, as someone earlier pointed out, after all these years, the men still haven't figured it out because they are just going it in a certain way. And we're saying, no, we actually do better when we work together.
And one of the things that add to that is we talked about women and women not having the power, whatever. I think we need to forget that debate almost. We need to think about gender fluidity. Doesn't matter which color, which size, which whatever you are. It's fluid, right? What matters is what you do. What matters is what you deliver. So I agree, we need to change the pipes, reallocate the system, reallocate the money, because the money talks, and we all know that. But I think once this is done, we've got to let the better one rise to the top. And that's all there is. It's just the current system doesn't work. And I think if we start to put all these stones together, we can start creating that ecosystem that suddenly can just irrigate, all the amazing projects that we have all around the world. And if women are as busy as we all are really, doing all sorts of things, multitasking, running families, educating children, trying to do jobs, then suddenly I think you'll see all of that sort of rising out of the ground, and you'll see all of that flourish. It's a totally different environment we're looking at.
Do you got something to say?
Yes, thank you. I think that going forward, what we're looking for is a new way of doing things, and I think we shouldn't be overly focused on we need to, we need women to do this, we need men to do this. What we need is a different way of doing it, which is, I think, a more female way of doing things, which is the collaboration, which is not the dog eat dog, which is being happy that other people have success together. So one of the projects that I'm working on is I'm very, very focused on what I call turning down the tap on new. One of the things that we all need to do is we need to consume a hell of a lot of resources, and we need to address things which some people say they're a distraction, they're not that important. I think everything is important right now. So I'm very focused on replacing single-use waste with reusables, and I'm now working with a network of startup companies. And what's really wonderful is they're working together. So they aren't all there just pursuing their own business. They are cooperating. They're identifying areas of activity which they all need to address, and they're sharing ideas. I would say that's quite a traditionally seen as female trait. That's what we need going forward. We need this cooperation. And whether we see that from male founders or female founders, it's absolutely fine. What we need is this different way of thinking about everything. And again, coming back to that, so I can talk, in terms of what I personally feel that we all need to take on board when we think about finance, is we need a different way of thinking about it. We're in a climate and biological biodiversity crisis. And so when you think about finance, traditionally, the male way of thinking about finance is it's all about financial return. When you invest, the thing that you're thinking about is how much money you're going to get back. What I come back to all of the time is that myself, as a mum, it's not enough for me to be investing for financial return, because that's actually not really going to help my kids if in the future my kids are wildlife, your kids. It's not going to help us if we continue to invest in this system that is just focused on growth and financial return, and it's not addressing all of these issues. So when we talk about now investing for our families' security and our future, we need to be thinking about how we are addressing that emergency. And again, I think that comes back to a more female way of doing things.
I was just going to say that I think one of the biggest dangers to us not doing what we're supposed to do is the silos. So a lot of folks in tech are like, we're doing it right? We're innovating, we're building these startups. They're going to mitigate and solve for the climate crisis. And then we sit on our pedestals and literally look straight ahead and go, I'm not going to talk to government, they're too slow. Or this part of the sector, or this sector is not who I'm going to work with, because they don't actually understand how to move things. And what I found and what our team finds at Second Muse is it has to be all of it. So we run Melinda Gates' Pivotal Ventures Get Cities initiative, which is focused on getting more women into tech. We run NASA Space Apps Challenge, which really looks at innovation for space and climate. We run in Singapore, the Incubate Network in partnership with Circulate Capital. And our fundamental belief is that when you support local entrepreneurs and you do that across sectors, because we need the policies, we need the capital, we need the foundations and the philanthropy, all of the philanthropic dollars to understand that we can't have climate justice conversations over here and capital conversations over here. And it makes me so frustrating to talk about trillions of dollars going to climate investment, right? And people becoming trillionaires, right? And, there was, I think, Blackstone CEO was like, the next 200, startups or unicorns in the startup space will be in the climate space. And you know who I see right now raising funds and investing money and also being able to raise their funds at just ridiculous rates are white men. Mm-hmm. And we have to change who allocates the money. We have to change the way we talk about who should have access to that money, right? And we can't do that if the teams are not diverse in capital. And so, one thing that we've been doing on our team is trying to merge the conversation around climate justice and climate innovation and all the capital and all of the, excitement around tech. It can't be separate because, one, innovators look like everyone across the globe, right? They don't just look like a white man living in San Francisco. And if that's the only people we fund, we are missing the mark on finding the best solutions. And I truly believe that not only on an impact front is that going to be incredible for the work that we're doing, but also from a returns front, because you're looking at bringing diversity of thought into innovation. And you have to do that in a way that looks at who really is the best innovator. And really what it comes down to is, to point to the earlier point is, where's the best talent? Who's doing the best research? Who's finding the best science? And if we're not being inclusive, we're actually not going to fund or deploy any of the solutions that need to come to market, right? And I think, everyone talks about Elon Musk and Tesla. Their first funders was government. They funded the R&D of most of the work that they do now. And so when we actually look at research and science that's existed in the climate space, a lot of it has come from government access to capital, grants, all of the agencies that have been really, really being a part of catalyzing climate innovation. And so all of that to say that silos are just the biggest danger, I think, to the work that we're all doing. And if you don't talk to government, please talk to government, because government is doing some really great things, but also they need to talk to you. If you think they're doing terrible, tell them, talk to them, give them such suggestions, talk to them about incentives. And same thing with the private market. We have to talk to the impact folks, to the philanthropic, people who are really, really lending their wealth to be a part of this solution. And so, I just urge everyone to really think about our role and not sitting in silos and thinking that we're the only ones doing the right thing, because most likely we're not.
There are some very big voices doing that at the moment.
Okay, so we're running out of time, and so I just want to, we'll start with Justin first, but if we did have the world leaders right in front of us, and of course they're watching on the live stream, but if they were here, what would be your top recommendation of what simply must happen now to create a financial system fit for the future? Justin?
Well, we have spearheaded science with experts around the world that shows that it's possible for us to achieve a world of 1.5 degrees C or lower. But we have to do that in the next 5 to 8 years. I mean, the change that needs to happen is right now. And the way that we can get there is by transitioning to 100% renewable energy. We need to protect and restore 50% of our world's lands and oceans. And then the last piece is transitioning away from an extractive industrial and agriculture system to a regenerative agriculture system. And so, science tells us what we need to do, and it is not aligning with the commitments that we're hearing from COP right now. So it's time to, we heard a great announcement around ending deforestation by 2030, and then the next day, some of those countries were already talking about the fact that they're not going to end deforestation. So there's some very hard boundaries in the sand about what we need to do to build and protect the future for ourselves, for our children, for our grandchildren, for every person on this planet. And at the heart of it, which often gets left out of the finance discussion, is nature. Nature is at the core of sustaining life for all people, plants, animal, every single person, no matter what their economic status, where they live in the world, color of their skin. Nature is what gives us clean air, clean water. And we have to put it at the center, and we have to get it to the guardians on the ground who are the true protectors of our land. And in many cases, that's indigenous people. 40% of the 50% we need to protect and restore is indigenous lands. So we need to completely rethink, how finance flows and how it gets to those on the front lines that are the best protectors of our planet and our future.
Yeah. Okay, so we have to make it really snappy now. Yeah. Are you up for this? Okay, so top recommendation?
To fund people who are doing different things in the finance world. We run design labs where we actually launch new types of financial mechanisms. We have a $50 million climate fund that looks at climate innovation on the AI and digitization side of things. We also are exploring a $500 million social finance fund, because a lot of funds that come online are really small. And what happens is that institutional investors can't fund them, right? Because they're writing much larger checks. And so we have an entire asset class that's not participating in impact investing, that's not looking at climate innovation and really looking at impact when we talk about what investment will look like for this space. And so I think if you are talking to folks, if you're involved in how capital gets allocated currently, I would just love to connect and also just hear more about how we can collaborate, because we are looking to do this globally and launch all different types of financial mechanisms and really just redesign, right, the way that capital gets deployed. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, you've heard it all. We need to rig the system for success right now, and we need to pay people to do the right thing, pay them to be green, pay them to disclose on transition and what they're doing in terms of regeneration. We just don't really have time for mitigation now. We need to move to regeneration. So we need to stop looking at short term. We need to look at long term, but that needs to be embedded in the system and therefore in pay. That's really my call to action. Some good people are working at it, great investors, and they will help you, they will help the cause. People like the GPIF, the pension fund in Japan, people like CalPERS in the US, Scott Stringer, the New York City controller, their heart's in the right place, they're trying to do it, and I think we need to work with them and we need to push super hard, because right now things are crumbling. This is the time where we can rebuild.
Okay. Thank you.
Very quickly, there's a lot of talk in the finance sector about we need to fund nature, and that's a big passion of mine because we absolutely need to fund nature, but that cannot be offsetting. That cannot be enabling business to continue as usual. So yes, financing nature, but that's got to be on top of decarbonisation. And what I would say to everyone in the finance sector, I would say to everybody in government, I would say to anyone that has any form of influence is think about what you would do if your child was given a terminal diagnosis. Then think about what you would do if there was something you could do to address that terminal diagnosis would help not just your child, but all their friends, everyone else that you know, hundreds of thousands, millions of people. I want you to act that quickly because my understanding from what the scientists are telling us is that our future generations, maybe even us, we have been given a terminal diagnosis. And so actually, I think we do need to think in the short term. What we're doing now, I'm not really interested in what's going to happen by 2050. What I'm interested in what's going to happen this year and next year and for the next 10 years.
Thank you. Last word.
Yeah, totally forgot what the original question was so excited before when I got to go first. Now I have to go last, and I see what a problem this is. Look, I will just keep it short. I agree with what everyone here has said. We need to finance nature-based solutions, finance the solutions that will take care of our planet. We need to be more inclusive and diverse in the way that we're thinking about finance. But I really think that if we want to do all those things, we need to put more women in finance, and we need to get the finance to women. The time is now.